go all in, trade away maybe a pick, at least a minimum first round pick, especially for Serge Ibaka's contract, because this is a little higher than Marc Gasol's actually, and really trade away a first round pick, maybe a second round pick, maybe another first round pick. That would be a lot, but see how they could do with Marc Gasol on that roster. Maybe slot him in at the power forward position alongside Valanciunas. See if he could stretch the floor for him a little bit. He's always been a pretty decent three-point shooter, so see if he could do that, and then really see how they could do and whether they could finally break that playoff hump.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Toronto, I've always, we talked about Toronto in the past, that you got to do something. You got to do something new because whatever you have right now is not working. Boston's going to get better next year. Philly's going to be better. Even if they don't add anyone, they're just going to be better because their players are going to be 1 year older. So, yeah, it's time if you're Toronto to really do something new, and any Marc Gasol might help you, especially since it'd be hard for, maybe not hard, but, Gasol would be difficult to guard for a Philly or a Boston. I'm not saying that they can't do it, obviously, but, it'd be another good, former All-Star being added to a good team that's full of veterans. So, yeah, it would work well.
Yeah. So, real quick with J. Michael Green, he doesn't have a ton of value anymore. He never really did have a ton of value. His contract is just under $8 million for this next season. He's a solid player, solid starter at best. He could provide some type of value to maybe a team like Phoenix at the power forward position or Denver coming off the bench behind Millsap. He might be worth a second-round pick or 2 second-round picks at best, maybe just like the Wilson Chandler situation, 1 second-round pick and another swap of second-round picks. I think those would be the best fits for him just because of the fact that they have contracts they could trade for him. Denver have Darrell Arthur and Phoenix have Jared Dudley, both on 1-year deals at similar prices. Therefore, I think they'd be able to get something done in the deal if they desire to do so. Moving on real quick to the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll quickly recap the deals we had with Marc Gasol and J. Michael Green before we move on.
So we talked about Marc Gasol being sent to the Portland Trail Blazers for maybe an Evan Turner and some fillers, then to the Washington Wizards for Ian Mahinmi and some fillers, and the Toronto Raptors for a Serge Ibaka and then maybe a draft pick and some fillers, and then JaMychal Green, Danny proposed maybe being sent to Denver or Phoenix for a few second-round picks. All right, next we're going to talk about Kevin Love and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland Cavaliers obviously should be in rebuild mode. They lost the best player their franchise have ever had, and now it's time to see what they can do. There have been reports that they believe Kevin Love is going to stay there, but we believe that Kevin Love is still at an age of, 30? So he's still at a tradable age. Before being with LeBron, he was one of the real better players. He was definitely a 22 and 12 or like 11 guy, which is pretty good with points and rebounds. So what are some options that Cleveland's going to have with a Kevin Love?
Yeah, and I think, first of all, I think to respond to you, I think Kevin Love will be traded probably before the trade deadline. I think they will hold on to him and really let him start off the season there just to try to build up his trade value. Now, that's a risk due to the fact that Kevin Love could flounder in that situation, but I really do feel he will be traded at some point, even if he does flounder. Just get whatever you can in return for him. It just makes no sense keeping him there. But I think an ideal situation would be the Houston Rockets. I think the Houston Rockets could definitely use him to try to keep pace with the Golden State Warriors. I think a trade for Ryan Anderson and a couple of first-round picks. And to preface this, I don't believe Kevin Love is worth 2 first-round picks. He's not. However, he is worth probably 1 late first-round pick, just like Houston is adding in this deal. And a second, due to the fact that Houston is throwing in Ryan Anderson's $20 million contract over 2 years, while Kevin Love has a contract of over $20 million for only 1 year. So now Cleveland is taking on an additional year of Ryan Anderson. Therefore, they are owed at least 1 first-round pick for that. So I believe that Houston would give up 2 first-round picks to be able to get Kevin Love in this deal. I think he'd be the ideal fit there. He could shoot threes. He could go down low and rebound alongside Clint Capella, who they should resign. I'm not sure if they will at this point, but that's a player that they should bring back if they want to compete with the Warriors. which is probably the reason why they will bring him back, because they realize that that's their only option at this point for a center. But I feel like, adding Kevin Love to this roster would really help them keep pace with what the Warriors did this offseason.
Yeah,
What do you feel?
if I'm Cleveland, I actually would be like, look, Houston, you have to give me at least 2 first-round picks, and I might even want 3. The reason being is because Houston is left in the position now where they're in win-now mode, right? They gave Chris Paul this big contract, right? He's going to be making a ton of money. And, Chris Paul only's got a couple more years left of, like, real high-level basketball, right? So Houston knows that their opportunity to win is either this year or next year, right? So they look at it and they're like, okay, well, adding Kevin Love is actually going to improve them a lot. Like I said, Kevin Love has been one of, in my opinion, the more underrated players. I didn't know how well the fit with LeBron would be. LeBron is hard to play with from what we've seen. So I think, Kevin Love would be a great fit. We're playing with James Harden and Chris Paul. Obviously, his defense is a little suspect, but I think it's better than Ryan Anderson. And, if you add them, he can shoot all the threes he wants. He can go down there. He can rebound a little bit. Maybe you could use him in post-ups a little bit, which I think would be fine. I think if I'm Cleveland, I want at least 2 picks, and I'm going to see if I can try to get a 3rd, because I hold the cards here. Because Houston doesn't have a lot of ways of getting better. And this would be one of the ways they can get better. This would be one of the ways they can, you know what? You guys added DeMarcus Cousins. We added Kevin Love. So if I'm Cleveland here, I'm trying for that trade. I think the fit with Kevin Love as well fits well in Houston. The other option we had is Kevin Love being sent to Indiana. We would propose this with sending Thaddeus Young, Corey Joseph, and a first-round pick.
Yeah, and really, Corey Joseph and their point guard, Darren Collison, are replaceable. It would really depend on which one Indiana wants to keep as their point guard there, to either play as a starter alongside Oladipo or come off the bench behind Tyreke Evans. But I think Kevin Love would be a good fit there. They need a power forward. I mean, they have Thaddeus Young, but I think Kevin Love would provide a little bit more of a more talented power forward at that position. Can't really say more stable because they're in similar situations where they have some injury histories, but they're around the same age. But I think Kevin Love is just a little bit of a better version of a Thaddeus Young. He could stretch the floor a little more, probably play alongside their center. What's their center's name out there?
It's Miles Turner.
Yeah, he could play along Miles Turner pretty well. And I think he would really help them really add a good veteran who's won before, knows what it takes to win, and knows how to lead a team due to the fact that he's been there before. So I think it'd be a solid veteran addition to a good Indiana Pacers team who's looking for a veteran addition, who's looking for veteran talent.
Yeah, it stretches the floor from them. They get another, former All-Star. I mean, he was an All-Star this year, so they get another All-Star here. And they can compete in the East. If they had Kevin Love, they could think like, maybe we can compete with Philly or with Boston. If Philly doesn't do it, might makes any changes this year. I would see Indiana having a chance to beating them a few games in the series and maybe beating them 4 games in the playoff series. So I would make this trade if I am Indiana. It's a 2-year. He has a 2-year contract. If it doesn't work out, it's not for too long, and you're not giving up too much with giving out a pick. Thaddeus Young is probably going to be gone next year, or he'll have the option to leave at least. And you have the 2 guards with Tyreke Evans, Darren Collison, and Oladipo being able to play a point guard role. So you would be fine there.
Yeah, so to quickly recap this Kevin Love situation, we've suggested sending him either to Houston or Indiana as a good options. And I want to quickly run through the rest of the roster, which isn't really that good, but they could get some value, for example, for a Kyle Korver, who's just a 3-point snipe shooter at this point. Got 1 year at about $7-8 million left on his contract. Solid fit might be Philly for Jared Bayless and a couple of second-round picks. Philly has 18 players on their roster, a lot of them young. They will have to minimize that to 15, so maybe using some of these guys as a trade chip for a veteran player like Kyle Korver would make sense. Another player is Tristan Thompson. Not many good fits out there for a Tristan Thompson. They'd be able to find something to get in return, maybe a second-round pick, maybe a team like Washington would work for him, who's looking for some type of athletic center at best. Maybe Portland, maybe Toronto again. Those are just small teams. Maybe Milwaukee, but who knows? They'd have to find a package for him, maybe get back a second rounder while taking on a bad contract. And two players in J.R. Smith and George Hill, who I really want to quickly review, due to the fact that even though they don't have barely any trade value left, the one thing about both of those players is George Hill's contract is about $20 million this season, and while J.R. Smith is about $15 million. And even though they both have a second year on their contract, those contracts are non-guaranteed. So really, what they could do with these two players is use them to pick up a contract like Joakim Noah or Luol Deng, Ian Mahinmi, Chandler Parsons, really any team willing to trade away one of those players with 2 years remaining on their contracts, and they are bad contracts, and really give up a first-round pick alongside to take on George Hill, who could then really release and not be on the books for barely anything because of the fact that they are non-guaranteed. So a team like the New York Knicks, who are trying to clear cap space, would be willing to trade maybe a Joakim Noah and a future first-round pick for a George Hill, and then they could just get rid of George Hill after this season, and they won't be on the books for barely any of his contract. So really, that would be the only way they'd be able to use those two players to get some type of value in return. We want to look over one more team real quick, the San Antonio Spurs, who obviously we've discussed the Kawhi Leonard possibilities in length. We won't touch on that anymore. But we want to see what type of value we feel they could get in return for a LaMarcus Aldridge and a Danny Green, who are two more players on the roster who they could really extract some type of value for.
Yeah, I think, LaMarcus Aldridge, obviously he's up there in age, but he only has... Well, he has 3 years left on his deal because he did just resign. But they're at like $26 million next year and then $24 the third year. So they're reasonable deals, right? He did show this year that he can lead a team to getting 47 wins, right? He was the best player. He was probably the only offensive proven player on the team. So there is some value for LaMarcus Aldridge. I think the teams that he can go to are not going to change too much. But I can see him, for instance, fitting in well with a Minnesota Timberwolves team. The Timberwolves would, in that case, have to offer an Andrew Wiggins. I don't know if the Spurs want an Andrew Wiggins because he hasn't shown much yet. And he did get a huge deal, which is a 5-year deal, worth, in the $28 million range a year. So I don't know if the Spurs want to take that on. But the Spurs can also think like, hey, maybe this is a guy who, we have the best player development in the league. We can change him around. We could make him into the potential starter he's supposed to be. So they end up making this deal if they decide to rebuild. I think Portland's another option, very similar to the trades we talked about before. Evan Turner would have to be involved, maybe a Zach Collins, and a pick or two. I think, LaMarcus Aldridge last year, there was rumors that he reached out to Dame Lillard about trying to facilitate back a trade to Portland. So I think the fit there would be okay. I think it definitely improves the team with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. And like I said before, Portland needs to do something. So this might be something that is helpful.
Yeah, and I think a dark horse candidate for an ideal fit would be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, you would have to trade away Carmelo Anthony, essentially alongside some draft assets for LaMarcus Aldridge, probably 2 draft picks, because of the fact that San Antonio would be taking on Carmelo's contract and essentially the $30 million left on his 1-year contract at this point. Now, again, they've been already rumored to be heading towards a split. Probably traded him away, Carmelo Anthony, to San Antonio. San Antonio takes the 2 draft picks from Oklahoma City Thunder, releases Carmelo Anthony, lets him go wherever he wants. I think wherever, if he does get traded anywhere, unless it's a team he wants to be like Houston or LA, he's as good as gone. They'll agree to some kind of buyout agreement. Essentially, whoever trades for him is getting the draft picks that they want in return. And in this situation, the Spurs are getting back 2 future first-round picks. Now, as complicated as this would be for Oklahoma City, just because of the fact that LaMarcus Aldridge does have 3 years remaining on that contract, and that tax bill would be extremely huge for them over the next 3 years. they've shown that they're willing to do it. I mean, they're showing that they really want a build a winner a lot around Russell Westbrook. And now